Hi, welcome to this quick Godot tutorial. I thought I would show you how to make a typing text effect in a couple of different ways. So let's get started. This is the basic scene. This is the text. I chose a sort of nightmare-y sort of horror theme text because I tend to find that this effect is most used in sort of found footage kind of video games. You get it in RPGs as well, but yeah. So the thing that bothers me with this effect a lot of the time is if you just append text to get the effect. So you start with N and then I, or N and then NI, NIG, etc., etc., etc. You end up with this kind of effect where the text will type and it will look sort of okay, but the problem is, as you add more text, the auto wrap function of the label will sort of move text from one line to the next, which, you know, that is a perfectly logical thing to have happen. It's sort of what would happen if you were to type in a word processor, but it doesn't look that polished in a video game, and when people are trying to read along, say on a Let's Play or on a stream, it can be a bit jarring to have the word that you're reading suddenly jump from the first line to the second line. So I'll show you the example. So this is just the standard append text, and what this is doing is it's adding a character each time the timer times out. Actually, just before I run this, let me just show you the scene. So we have the example text, which sets the text. When you click start, you then have the several mode buttons, which are sort of more of a quick setup thing for me rather than relevant to what you will be doing. And then we have the typing label with a timer attached, and that is the label down at the bottom here that will fill with the text that we have. So we click start with the append text mode done. And what you should see is the word opposite in veil, or the words opposite in veil, will jump to the next line as they fill out, and it kind of just is a bit unpleasant looking. So, start. So, as you might have noticed, opposite, it got to about the second O in opposite, and it suddenly jumped to the next line. And again, as I said, that is sort of how it would work in a real typing application, but in the realm of a video game where you are sort of trying to tell a narrative story, it is not the best. So, I was trying to come up with a custom solution, and I just couldn't get it to work any better than append text. I will show you the custom solution at the end, but as I was sort of looking through the source code to see if there was a bug or whatever was causing the problem with my solution, I remembered that there's a thing called Percent Visible. And if we look at Percent Visible in the label thing, the tooltip says, useful to animate the text in a dialog box. So you'll notice it, by default, it's set to 1. That is that it's sort of saying 0 is 0%, 1 is 100%, and that way you can essentially multiply the amount of text in there by 1 to get the full amount visible. So let's have a look at the percent visible function. If we start now, you should notice something about this. So it was more obvious with veil, but you may have noticed that both opposite and veil didn't jump lines, and this is because some magic in the Godot Label auto wrap function takes into account the percentage visible and actually pre-lays out the text in a nice format, so you don't get this odd jumping effect. So I'll just show you how to do this quickly. This is the original one that you just saw where it jumped around. You have the text, and each time the timer times out, it increments the current position of the substring and then just sets the text to the substring of full text. When the character position reaches the full text length, then the timer stops and the UI unlocks. Again, sort of irrelevant to how you would set it up, but I feel like it's useful to show how that works. So yes, it's a very simple thing to set up. It's what essentially 4 lines of code, really. 7 if you include this function, which is, I would say, somewhat optional. So yeah, really quick, simple, but it does have that weird jumping effect. So, and the thing is, if you are looking for that effect with that jumping, it's a perfect thing to do, perfect thing to use. But if we look at the second example, which is the percent, it's even simpler. You have one variable, PC in this case, and what that does is it determines the percentage amount that gets increased with each tick of the timer. So by setting it to 1 over the text length, you are essentially getting 1 character per tick. If you wanted more characters, you could change this. You could say 2 divided, or, you know. This yield, just make sure that this text has updated before trying to call this. I'm not 100% sure it's necessary, but I feel like it works a lot more accurately and frequently if you have this in here first, because controls usually update on the next idle frame, not immediately. You reset the percentage visible to 0 when you start the animation, otherwise nothing will happen when you go to add it. And then each frame we increment percent visible, so this value, by PC, which if we look at this example, there's, I think, 150 characters, so it will take 150 timeouts of the timer before you have the full text, and that is determined by this PC. When it reaches 1 or higher, just in case the multiplier isn't exactly around multiple of 100%, we stop the timer and emit the signal, which again is more just for this, so that it unlocks all the buttons and everything. So yeah, that was the basics of it. It's very simple. Again, you have the append version, which has the thing where it jumps around a bit, and then you have the percentage version. So my thinking was, with my custom solution, it's a lot more involved, and it doesn't work much, if any, better than the append version, unfortunately. But my idea was, you find every word in the text, you then make an array of words, and you essentially, every time the timer updates, it updates the offset position. It then tries to fill the entire word by using a substring of the word up to that position. So you see, we have output equals word substring 0 to position. So position 1, you would get 1 character, position 2, you would get 2 characters, etc., etc. You then have the position minus the word length, and then it tries to fill in a character, for example, a space, for each character in the word that isn't on display. And I was hoping that that would allow for the text to essentially be auto-formatted so that it wouldn't jump. It doesn't work that well. It works with certain characters and certain combinations, certain font sizes, etc. But it doesn't work much better than the append. But I've left it in this tutorial because it actually gives a really cool sort of hackery effect, I think. And I just felt like it would be a good sort of thing to show. So we're going to use the custom solution now. We put the fill character to period, and when I press start, what you should notice is it will say n ... and then ni ... nig ... and so on until the word is finished, and then it will go on to the next. And the way it goes on to the next, basically at the end of each word you have this stored text, and the stored text gets appended with the last word that was fully completed. And then each time the timer updates, you are essentially appending the filled word to the stored text, and this way you don't get sort of duplicated entries of words and sort of extra dots and stuff. It just works better. Obviously a lot more memory overhead, but yeah, so this is how this works. Right, the darkness keeps me from sleep. I was supposed to have the opposite effect, but I can't stop thinking about what lurks beyond the black veil. And as you can see, again, it kind of jumped. Veil jumped to the next line. I think opposite might have as well. Darkness keeps me from sleep. It was supposed to have the opposite. Yeah, it also jumps. So yeah, it's not really any better than append text, but it does have this kind of cool yeah, it has this kind of cool hackery effect. You can, change it to stars maybe. I don't know. It's just, meh. Hopefully that was interesting. Hopefully you now know how to do it properly, which would be to do this. So essentially you are setting the percentage visible every tick of a timeout. You could do this other ways. You could increment it using an animation player. You could do it on delta during process, but I find timer just works a little bit better. It's quicker and easier to tweak, so by default you have a 0.05 second timeout, which feels like a good typing speed. If you want it to happen faster, you can decrease that to say 0.01. If you want it to go a little bit slower, like an incompetent typer or just something that's a little bit easier to read for people, you can set it to 0.1, 0.2 seconds. Anything slower than that, and it's kind of painful to read, but, So yes, I hope that was useful. And if it was, feel free to like and subscribe and all that good stuff. I do fairly regular-ish game development Twitch streams at twitch.tv/DrentsoftGames. I hope to see you there. We usually do random things. I'm happy to discuss programming problems, general programming or Godot related. I also do tabletop game development, so if you want to learn how to make board games or card games, I occasionally do content on that as well. I am currently playtesting a card game that I'm hoping to release sometime early next year, so if you would like to come and help me playtest that, you are more than welcome. And yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.